There's a famous story about the Rabbi Hillel, who lived and taught in the 1st century BCE and was considered perhaps the greatest Torah scholar of his day, perhaps of all time. And Rabbi Hillel was particularly known for getting at the meaning behind the text rather than getting wrapped up in the literal understanding of the words. According to the website Chabad.org, his simple message for his disciples was to love peace and pursue peace, love all God's creations, and bring them close to the Torah. Well, one day the story goes there was a certain Gentile, a non-Jewish man, who was interested in converting to Judaism, but he was not particularly interested in spending a lot of time on this. So he went to Rabbi Shammai, who was the other famous rabbi of that day, and he said, "I will convert to Judaism if you can explain to me all of the Torah, that is the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, while I stand on one foot." And Rabbi Shammai is insulted, and he says, "Get this joker out of here," and they grab him and they throw him out of the house. So the guy dusts himself off, and he goes over to Rabbi Hillel, and he makes the same offer. "I will convert to Judaism on the spot if you can explain to me all of the Torah while I stand on one foot." And Hillel watches with amusement as the man gets up on one foot. And Hillel says, "Whatever is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. That is the whole of the Torah. The rest is commentary. Go and study it." And the man is amazed, and that day begins his conversion to Judaism. So religions are notoriously slippery things to get at. What they are exactly. A religion may sometimes be expressed as a body of explicit teachings, but its meaning is also captured through traditions, through rituals. It is stored and transmitted through physical objects, through stories, through memories, passed down through the generations. The 7 principles are part of the meaning of Unitarian Universalism, but so is lighting a chalice, so is bringing water to the water communion service, so is the teal hymnal, so are our shared stories. The meanings of religions don't stay put very well. A religion is the lived experience of all of the people who have come before, but its meaning is continuously being changed by all of the people who will come after and who are continuously coming into it. So it's very hard to say what a religion is. Nonetheless, many religions have sayings or scriptures or teachings that are pointed to as particularly capturing the essence of that religion's teaching, of what it is. So Hillel, in our story, located the essence of Judaism in what we would now call the Golden Rule. But Judaism also has the passage in Deuteronomy called the Shema. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one," which sets forth the main theological understanding of Judaism. And then in the Old Testament, there are also the teachings of the prophet Micah, who said, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is required of you, and it is to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." Christianity has the famous passage of John 3:16, well known to us from so many professional football broadcasts, which reads, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever believe in him shall not perish, but shall have eternal life." But Jesus himself also offered this summary of his teaching, which is called the Great Commandment. "Love God with all your heart and your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." Islam has its 5 pillars, which encompass its central teaching about God and Muhammad, and its ethical and religious requirements around charity, prayer, pilgrimage, and fasting. Buddhism has the 4 Noble Truths, which describe the problem of suffering, and the Eightfold Path, which is its solution. And in all these cases, the religions are being summarized either in the form of their teaching or their commandments, or as statements of belief or rules for correct observance. So what do we do then when we get to Unitarian Universalism, which doesn't exactly have teachings, it definitely doesn't have commandments, It doesn't specify beliefs, and it doesn't have required rules for observance. What is that? Is that even a religion? And indeed, some Unitarian Universalists would shy away from that word religion and say this is a philosophy or this is a movement. And I don't intend to open that debate today. For the record, I am comfortable describing Unitarian Universalism as a religion. But my point is, religions are slippery to describe to begin with, and Unitarian Universalism is perhaps more slippery than some. Not all, but some. Many UUs find it hard to describe just what this religion is about, especially when talking to people who are used to thinking of religion in terms of beliefs or rules or teachings. And that brings us to the elevator challenge, which is the subject of our sermon today. And it is presented thusly. You get on a hotel elevator with a total stranger, and you both press the top floor. He happens to notice the UUI chalice keychain proudly displayed on your luggage. And he says, "What's that?" You say, "It's from my church, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Indianapolis." And then he says, "Unitarian Universalist? I have never heard of that. What is that?" And now you've got until the elevator reaches the top floor to explain to this person what Unitarian Universalism is all about. And that is your UU elevator speech. Now, for me, this scenario often takes place in like the Uber ride from the convention center to the hotel and back when attending General Assembly. What are you in town for? The Unitarian Universalist Convention. I have never heard of that. What is that? Or here in the Midwest, actually, people you barely even know will just randomly ask you, like in line at Panera Bread, "So where do you go to church?" And you say, "I go to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Indianapolis." And they say, "I have never heard of that. What is that?" And now you've got until like the little flashy thing goes off telling you that your soup is ready, right, to talk about it. So today we're going to talk about how to talk about Unitarian Universalism, or don't talk about it. And I want to warn you ahead of time so no one is too terribly disappointed. This sermon does not end with me giving you an elevator speech, okay? My own elevator speech changes all the time. It depends on who I'm talking to, how much time we have, maybe what's going on in the world or my life, or like what was the last really great UU sermon that I just read that has inspired me. But the goal is not for people to share what I think Unitarian Universalism is. The goal is for you to get more comfortable talking about what you think it is from your heart and on the basis of your own experience. Now, what many people will default to when talking about Unitarian Universalism, and especially when talking about their Unitarian Universalist church, is to first say what it is not. Someone might say, well, it's a church, but it's not like a church. It's different, right? It's different. And I think that impulse comes from a desire not to be misunderstood or not to be misidentified, right? A lot of people hear church, they think it must be a Christian church, and there's a whole host of assumptions that come with that, right? What it means to be a churchgoer. I've even heard UU ministers, who are, of course, deeply proud of their religious identity, say they're tempted to say, well, I'm a pastor, but I'm not like a pastor, right? Because there's a lot of assumptions about what it means to lead a church. Some UUs don't like to use the word church at all, right? They say this is a fellowship, or it's a congregation, or it's a society. But UUI, like many, probably most, uses the word church. So you say it's a church, but not like a church. And then you follow with, it's a little hard to explain. Because it's a little hard to explain. It's even hard to say, right? By the time you've said Unitarian Universalist Church of Indianapolis, the elevator's already gone up like 2 floors. And you're running out of time. So precious seconds are ticking away, and what you have communicated so far to your interested and captive audience is that it's not a church, and it's a little hard to explain. And these are true things to say, but I would guess that most people find this a little distancing. Like, okay, it's hard to explain, and now you're going to explain it to me. Great. I would suggest starting instead with something like, I love it. Unitarian Universalism, I've never heard of it. What is that? Oh, I love it. Or, it's so interesting. Or, it's this amazing church. Many people, myself included, could honestly lead with, it changed my life. And some people could even lead with, it saved my life. Now, it's possible I'm making you uncomfortable here, or some of you uncomfortable here, with this idea of leading with something like that. I love it. It changed my life. And you may be wondering, why do we have to talk about this at all? Should we be talking about this? Many UUs, and not for no reason, are deeply suspicious of or allergic to anything that smacks of religious proselytizing, of pushing their religion or their beliefs on other people. You've had people push their beliefs on you, and maybe there was guilt involved or shame involved or some sort of pressure. The message that if you don't believe, you're a bad person or God is mad at you, whatever it was, and you want no part of that. UUs have such a great respect in general for the right of people to have their own beliefs that UUs don't, in general, like to evangelize. They certainly don't try to convert people. We don't push our beliefs or insist that we have access to the truth. And for many UUs, that does translate into some level of discomfort for talking about their own religious tradition in a way that invites other people into it, in a way that says, I love this, and you might love it too, or this is important to me, and it might be important to you too. And I understand that discomfort, and I understand where it comes from. But here's the thing. This is a thing that I hear at UUI all the time, and anyone who is serving a UU church has heard this many times. I hear people come to our church or come to this religion and say, I had no idea this kind of church was even possible. Where has this been all of my life? Or, this has always been the way I understood religion. I didn't know there was a name for it. I didn't know there were other people who felt this way. Or, I wish I'd known about this religion 10 years ago. It isn't proselytizing just to say, I really love my church. It's meaningful to my life. And it may be inviting someone into something that they've been looking for a very long time, possibly without even knowing it. So coming back to our elevator, we've said it's not church, and it's hard to explain. The next thing that is usually said is something to the effect of, it's a church where you can believe whatever you want. Right? It's a church where you can believe whatever you want. And that statement is trying to get at something which is really important about Unitarian Universalism. We are a free faith tradition and have been going all the way back to our founding. After all, we're heretics, right? The Unitarians believe that Jesus was not the same as God. The Universalists believe that no one went to hell. Heresy. Unitarianism was started by Christians who wanted to read the Bible and draw their own conclusions by the light of their own reason. William Ellery Channing, one of the great founders of Unitarianism, hated creeds, those fixed and frozen recitations of belief. In an appropriately titled letter called A Letter on Creeds, he wrote, "Who does not see that human creeds, setting bounds to thought and telling us where all inquiry must stop, tend to repress the holy zeal for truth, to shut our eyes to new illumination, to hem us within the beaten paths, to arrest that perpetual progress which is the life and glory of an immortal mind." That's how people wrote letters back in the day. The Universalists also insisted on broad latitude for individual belief. Hosea Ballou said, if we agree in love, there is no disagreement that can do us any injury, but if we do not, no other agreement can do us any good. And Unitarians and Universalists, as we expanded over time to become more and more theologically diverse, we welcomed in first non-Christians, and then humanists, atheists, agnostics, and then people from a wide variety of Eastern-influenced, neo-pagan, earth-based, eco-feminist spiritualities. We have never deviated from that free faith tradition. In the words of the great 16th century Unitarian minister Francis David, words that are almost certainly apocryphal, we say that we need not think alike to love alike, and we mean it. So this idea that it's the church where you can believe whatever you want is trying to get at that something important about our religious tradition. It is first and foremost a free thought tradition. And there is certainly something that captures the imagination about a church where Christians, atheists, Buddhists, pagans, skeptics, goddess worshippers, and Bob doesn't know what he believes. He doesn't even have a word for it. He doesn't want a word for it. But you're all sitting side by side, worshiping together, and growing and learning from each other, and being affirmed by each other. And it's beautiful, and we're supporting each other through laughter and tears, and we're working to build a more beautiful and just world. There is something about that captures the imagination. There's something about that is noble and beautiful. But just to say you can believe whatever you want doesn't quite get at that. Because you can also believe whatever you want in a bowling alley or at home in the privacy of your living room. Right? So what is it that brings us out of our living room and into this place together? Unitarian Universalism has never been just about or primarily about lack of orthodoxy, lack of creeds. There are deep themes interwoven through our history, reflecting the best of our thought and our experience. Unitarians have always had a strong belief in human goodness and in the promise of the human spirit. We believe in the power of reason, science, and education. We believe in human equality and in the democratic spirit. Universalists, who were a little more skeptical about human goodness and a little more realistic about the fact that humans fail sometimes, they believed in a God of love who unfailingly embraced all people. And in time, that became a belief that there is a love wherever you think it comes from that can transform and heal the world. And both believed that religion was not some otherworldly concern about something out there, but something that should motivate us to act in the here and now, to inform our own behavior towards our fellow human beings, and to change and reform human institutions. We sometimes say religion should first and foremost be about life before death. And that belief has inspired generations of Unitarians, Universalists, and Unitarian Universalists to take risks and to make sacrifices working for justice for all people. You can scarcely name an area of social progress in the last 200 years where UU was not deeply involved. From a different direction, our transcendentalist ancestors, people like Emerson and Thoreau, brought into our religious tradition a strong experiential component, a belief that spirituality is not something that we think, it's not a bunch of rules, it's something we encounter in ourselves and in the world. They taught us there's wisdom in all of the world's religions and that the divine is all around us, in us and especially in nature. And picking up these themes much later, feminist thinkers, deep ecologists, people from pagan and earth-centered traditions, they drew our attention to the deep interconnectedness of all life and of our interdependence with the web of creation, which is not only one of our deepest religious ideas, but also one of the most vitally relevant in this time of climate change and ecological collapse. So these ideas, these themes woven through our history, they're not orthodoxies. Today they're reflected in our 7 principles and our 6 sources, which you can find at the front of your gray hymnal. But the 7 principles are not statements of belief per se. They are not requirements of membership. The 7 principles represent our collective commitment to how we say we want to be in the world. They are a covenant freely entered into, a promise. And part of that commitment is working out together in freedom what these principles mean, how we understand them, and how we think they should be best lived out. And we will all have our own individual take on that. That's the freedom part. But those principles and the witness of our history and our tradition speak with a strong voice as well. And so this is a place where you can believe but what you want, but you should also expect to have your beliefs continuously tested and challenged against our core commitment to reason, to freedom, to justice, and to love. And this is a place where you can come to be inspired and lifted up and energized and ennobled by our collective commitment to reason and to freedom and to justice and to love. So now I ask you, what is it about that tradition, about this living tradition we call Unitarian Universalism, that speaks to you? The elevator speech is really the time to share what UU means to you personally, not what it is in some academic sense, because honestly, the person can Google that, right? But what it is for you in your heart and in your life. Because they can get the facts about Unitarian Universalism whenever they want to. You have a chance to tell them something true about Unitarian Universalism. There was a challenge on the internet a few years back called 6-Word Stories of Faith. And the challenge was for people to use just 6 words to describe the meaning of their faith for themselves and then tweet it out, hashtag my 6-word story of faith. And people participated from all kinds of religious and theological backgrounds. For example, science fiction author Stephen Baxter, writing from a humanist perspective, shared, Big Bang, no God, fade out, end. An anonymous fade out is 1 word. In this interpretation. I didn't write it. But I love that you're keeping me honest. An anonymous Jewish person shared, born Jewish, discovered bacon, still Jewish. And then some UUs got in the game. So here are some 6-word stories of faith shared by some UUs, many of these ministers. Love radically, serve gratefully, wonder daily. That's Robin Slaw. It really is all a miracle. Victoria Weinstein. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. Teresa Novak. God is one, God is love. Tracy Barrett. Love wins, be on its team. Lee Paxula. And held by love, I unlearn fear. Reverend Sean Dennison. So to get us thinking about what UU means to us in a simple way, suitable for sharing in an elevator, I'm going to encourage you to think about your own 6-word story of faith. However you understand it, including if you don't use the word faith to describe yourself at all. If you're new to UU or don't identify as UU, I invite you to write about whatever in your own tradition or your own journey speaks to you. You should all have slips of paper in your bulletin. You can write like 1 6-word story, or you can write a dozen. If you are up for it, you can text it or email it to us or leave it at the membership desk. Attach your name or not. And we will share these on Facebook and on Twitter and in the e-blast. But otherwise, this is for you to start thinking about what this faith means to you and how it speaks to you in your heart. So to get the ball rolling, I'm going to ask us to take like 1 minute to write one now. Don't overthink it. And I'll chime the singing bowl when the minute is up. Okay, so that is your 6-word story of faith. You can take it home and put it on your refrigerator. You can text it or email it to us or leave it on the membership desk. You can take a picture of it, and I encourage you to continue writing more. We have a message that many people want to hear, that there can be a community of deep ethical and spiritual commitment that inspires, challenges, and sustains us, that allows us freedom to question and explore and grow, that respects ancient wisdom and modern science, and that holds up a vision of hope and peace, grounded in the power of transforming love. Let us not be reluctant to share that message, but rather let us widen the circle of our community and invite others in. Blessed be, and amen.